All right, good afternoon. Welcome to the House Environment and Transportation Committee. Just so my colleagues know, the Democratic Caucus has a meeting at 4 o'clock. I know we have 2 briefings we're trying to squeeze in, but we're going to have to stop at around 3:55 so the members can get over there. We will have lots of time with these agencies and other stakeholders, so don't worry. But we are starting with the state of agriculture, and we'll bring up our ag industry reps. We have Kimmy Doran-Lyons from the Maryland Farm Bureau, Rusty Covington from the Delmarva Chicken Association, Wayne Richard from the Horizon Farm Credit, Jenny Schmidt from the Maryland Grain Producers Association, and John Swain from the Maryland Association of Soil Conservation Districts. We do this briefing at the start of every session because the ag industry is so important to the state and of course important to the jurisdiction of this committee. So we are happy to have you. I don't know what order you're planning to go, but I will leave it to you all to conduct yourselves, and thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Guyton, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Kimmy Lyons, and I serve as a board member of the Maryland Farm Bureau. I represent Harford, Baltimore, and Cecil counties. My family owns and operates Highview Farms, which is 4 generations strong. On our farm, we raise 100 head of cow-calf pairs, and after weaning, the calves are fed with feed from our own crops. We then sell our beef in our own on-farm market, other various retail locations, and to some local restaurants. Feeding our community with fresh and local products has always been our passion, but it hasn't been easy, much like it is for farmers across the state. I wanted to speak on 3 of Maryland Farm Bureau's priorities for this legislative session. Maryland agriculture depends heavily on long-standing state programs that keep farmland viable, productive, and environmentally responsible. 2 in particular, the Cover Crop Program and the Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Foundation, also known as MALF, are cornerstones of our success. Unfortunately, due to budget constraints, these programs were reduced last year. The Cover Crop Program is one of the most effective water quality tools in the entire Chesapeake Bay restoration effort. Farmers participate at high levels every year because they are good stewards of the land, and they know it protects soil health, prevents nutrient loss, and improves long-term productivity. Consistent funding ensures that this program remains reliable and accessible. These practices require significant economic input, and without state funds helping to alleviate the cost burden, participation in cover crop will decline. If we want continued progress on the Bay, cover crops must remain a priority. Similarly, MALF is our state's most successful ag land preservation program. It keeps farmland in production permanently, provides fair compensation to farm families, and maintains the rural landscape that so many Marylanders value. But demand for participation is outpacing available funding. If we want to keep farms as farms and not watch them get pushed out by competing land uses, MALF must be protected and re-strengthened to help reach the state's preservation goals of 40% by 2040. Maryland loses productive farmland every year, not because farms are unproductive, but because the land around them is under intense pressure from developers and renewable energy demands. We recognize the state's goals for renewable energy, but large-scale solar and related infrastructure are increasingly placed on prime agricultural soils. Once that land is converted, it is unlikely ever to return to food production. We encourage the state to prioritize rooftops, brownfields, industrial areas, and marginal lands for renewable energy development before consuming farmland that cannot be replaced. In one of the bills passed last year, it would require 5% of a county's priority preservation area to be transformed into large-scale solar. In Harford County alone, that's 110,000 acres of priority preservation, which would equal 5,500 acres of solar panels, which is equal to 4,200 football fields. Multiplied across the state, farming would no longer be the #1 industry. 40% of Maryland's farm is also leased by the farmers, which takes the control to sell for solar out of our hands. Many counties are willing to contribute acreage or rooftops of solar as long as it is not in our prime agricultural land. With major transmission lines expansions anticipated to meet energy demands, farmland is again at the center of the impact. We ask the state to work closely with farmers on routes, compensation, and protections for farm operations when eminent domain and right-of-way decisions are made. We understand the demand our state has for energy, but farmers cannot afford to give up land to make that happen, and neither can the consumer. Finally, I want to highlight a problem that nearly every Maryland farmer raises: uncontrolled deer populations. Deer damage is one of the most significant economic losses on farms today. In many counties, entire fields of soybeans, corn, vegetables, and specialty crops are wiped out before harvest. Farmers simply cannot absorb these losses year after year on top of weather implications and an ever-fluctuating grain market. We need stronger, more flexible deer management tools, whether through extended seasons, depredation permits, or coordinated population control efforts. This is both an agricultural issue and a statewide environmental issue, as overbrowsing harms forests, native habitats, and road safety. Food insecurity in Maryland is a huge threat, and nothing is more important than local, healthy, and affordable food. All of the issues we address today threaten our local food supply, driving food costs and dependability on other states and countries even higher. Maryland agriculture feeds our communities, protects open space, and contributes billions to the state economy, but the pressure on farmers has never been greater. By preserving funding for core ag programs, making thoughtful land use decisions, and addressing wildlife damage, the General Assembly can help ensure the pressures are alleviated from our existing farmers and that farming remains viable for future generations so that we can continue to feed Maryland, strengthen our industry, and preserve the farm and the farmer. On behalf of the Maryland Farm Bureau and the farmers we represent, thank you for your support and for your attention to these issues. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. The next person can just go ahead. We'll do questions after the panel.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Rusty Covington. I'm a senior grow out and housing manager with Purdue Farms, been with the company for 22 years, and currently serve as the president of the DCA Board of Directors. Our chicken community is made up of more than 1,200 independent family farmers raising chickens in nearly 4,900 chicken houses across Delaware, the Eastern Shore of Maryland, and Virginia. Alongside them are 5 chicken companies that employ over 18,000 people, plus the countless workers in hundreds of allied businesses who depend on our growers and companies for their livelihoods. We are still awaiting the official statistics for 2025, but in 2024, we collectively raised 613 million birds, producing 4.6 billion pounds of chicken. In Maryland, nearly 550 growers generate a total economic impact of $5.5 billion, and our industry contributed more than $255 million in local and state taxes. 2025 challenged our industry. In July, Maryland's CAPO general permit expired before a new permit was submitted to the EPA. We are still awaiting for a new permit to be adopted. As a result, anyone hoping to start a chicken farm cannot get a CAPO permit. And under current law, they can't even begin site work or secure financing. Right now, there is effectively a moratorium on new CAPO permits in Maryland due to factors outside of the legislative process. This is preventing millions of dollars in investment and blocking new and beginning farmers from entering our industry. At the same time, high-path avian influenza remains a serious threat. We are in the middle of the peak migratory season and have already seen 1 case in a Maryland broiler farm and 1 in Delaware. It's scary. There's no other word for it. Growers and everyone in the chicken community are nervous right now. Our farmers and industry are doing everything possible to protect the flocks through strict biosecurity measures, but even the most careful grower cannot guarantee 100% protection against this devastating disease. What we do know is that we are a strong community and we can get through this together with the help of our partners, including you, our legislators, and the Maryland Department of Ag. I hope each of you received your invitation to Chicken Day in Annapolis next Wednesday, January the 28th, at the Governor Calvert House. Please come meet our growers, company employees, allied business members, and enjoy some chicken, and even take a virtual reality tour of a chicken house. Finally, DCA, along with Horizon Farm Credit, will be hosting a dinner for all committee members tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. at Harry Brown's. Looking forward to meeting with each of you. Thank you for your time and your support of our farmers, our workers, and our communities.
Rusty, thank you. You'll be happy to know many of us have been to live chicken farms, although we welcome the virtual option as well, but we've done that multiple times as a committee, so don't worry.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Richard, Horizon Farm Credit.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Wayne Richard, and I'm honored to represent Farm Credit. I bring a strong background in agriculture and lending with years of experience working alongside farmers to help them succeed. I was born and raised on a small grain farm in Caroline County, graduated from the University of Maryland College Park School of Ag, and have proudly served Farm Credit for over 21 years as a lender and on the management team. For over a century, Farm Credit has been committed to supporting rural communities and agriculture by providing reliable, consistent credit and financial services through good times and bad. In Maryland alone, we serve over 5,000 members with nearly $1.7 billion in loan volume. Our portfolio reflects the diversity of Maryland agriculture. While poultry and grain are the largest sectors we finance, we also support dairy, cattle, nursery crops, and more. A unique aspect of Farm Credit is that we are a member-owned cooperative. Our borrowers are our owners. As a cooperative, we return a portion of our earnings to members each year through patronage dividends. In 2024, we distributed $19 million in cash back to our Maryland members. Supporting the future of agriculture is central to our mission. We offer financing and educational resources for young and beginning farmers to help them build a strong foundation for success. Additionally, we offer grant programs that directly support farmers and their efforts to grow their businesses. In 2025, 7 Maryland farms were recipients of these grants, including several urban ag farms in Baltimore, a Christmas tree grower in Talbot County, a truffle and lavender farm in Frederick County, a poultry farm in Caroline County, and a cut flower farm in Queen Anne's County. Our Farm Credit Foundation for Agricultural Advancement also supports the next generation by awarding scholarships of up to $10,000 to students pursuing careers in agriculture. At Farm Credit, our commitment goes beyond lending. We are partners in building a strong, sustainable future for Maryland agriculture and the communities that depend on it. Next, I'd like to share several perspectives on the current state of Maryland's agricultural economy. Agriculture remains a vital, resilient part of Maryland's broader economy, but the industry faces significant challenges. The drought of 2024 severely impacted grain farmers across much of the state. Combined with several years of depressed commodity prices and high input costs, profitability is under pressure. Looking ahead, the outlook for 2026 remains challenging, with most grain producers hoping simply to break even. Beyond the grain sector, inflation has impacted all sectors of agriculture, from the rising cost of machinery and equipment to higher repair expenses to rising electricity rates. These increases have severely cut into farm profits, further eroding already thin margins. Sustaining long-term farm profitability is essential to maintaining a strong and thriving agricultural economy in Maryland. Together, we must work collaboratively to ensure Maryland farmers have the resources and support they need to thrive while avoiding unnecessarily regulatory burdens that could make farming even harder. In closing, Farm Credit is proud to stand alongside Maryland's farmers, policymakers, and industry partners to ensure agriculture remains strong for generations to come. The challenges we face are real, but so is our commitment. By working together, sharing ideas, resources, and solutions, we can preserve the vitality of Maryland's agriculture economy and strengthen the communities that depend on it. Thank you for your time and dedication to supporting Maryland agriculture.
Good afternoon, Chairman Corman, Vice Chair Guyton, and members of the committee. My name is Jenny Schmidt. I'm a Queen Anne's County farmer, growing corn, wheat, soybeans, green beans, and wine grapes. I'm here on behalf of Maryland Grain Producers Association, the voice of corn, wheat, barley, and sorghum growers across the state. Maryland grain farmers play a vital role in our state's economy, producing nearly 100 million bushels of grain and soybeans annually that support local livestock and poultry sectors, contribute to food, feed, and renewable energy markets. In recent years, we've faced high input costs, as mentioned, historically tight margins, and market volatility. Many producers have, in fact, struggled to break even in both 2024 and 2025 with low commodity prices and adverse weather events. Despite these challenges, grain producers remain committed to investing in their operations and continuing their stewardship of Maryland's land and waters. Maryland farmers are proud of our long-standing commitment to environmental stewardship with the assistance of conservation programs like the Cover Crop Program, Agricultural Water Quality Cost Share, which you know as MAX, Conservation Reserve Enhancement, and the Healthy Soils Program. When margins are tight, farmers have fewer resources to invest in conservation, and these programs are essential to helping farmers adopt practices that improve soil health, reduce erosion, and protect the Chesapeake Bay watershed. While I understand this committee is not responsible for crafting the budget, we respectfully request your support in advocating for these critical conservation programs. Effective weed and pest management remains essential to productive grain farming. Farmers rely on tools that have undergone extensive federal review and approval through the US EPA to ensure safety and efficacy. State policies proposals to broadly restrict classes of pesticides without individualized scientific risk evaluation threaten to remove important tools from our toolbox to manage pest resistance and maintain yields. These tools also enable us to effectively implement conservation practices such as no-till and cover crops. Grain farming is one of the only businesses that buys retail and sells wholesale, as grains are traded on the Chicago Board of Trade. One of the important ways we are able to enhance our price is to enhance our demand. We are proud to be founding members of the Maryland Biofuels Task Force, which recently released a report on how expanded biofuel use can decarbonize Maryland's transportation sector. The task force report underscores the potential for higher biofuels blends, such as E15 and biodiesel blends, to increase demand for Maryland-grown feedstocks, improve market stability, and support local grain markets while contributing to our broader climate and energy goals. The report also highlights the need for infrastructure and policy support that can help farmers participate more fully in these emerging markets. For grain producers, a predictable and supportive biofuels market can offer a crucial price floor that strengthens long-term viability. We look forward to being able to bring those recommendations to fruition in the near future. Maryland's grain producers are committed to providing high-quality feed and food, supporting rural economies, and stewarding our natural resources. With thoughtful public policy, including a stable economic climate, robust biofuel market development, access to approved technologies, and strong conservation funding, Maryland's grain industry can continue to thrive and contribute to our state's prosperity. Thank you for your time. Want to switch?
Yeah, better switch.
Sorry.
Chairman Corman, Vice Chairman Guyton, members of the Environment and Transportation Committee, I would like to thank you for inviting me to present at the State of Maryland Agriculture event. My name is John Swain. I'm a grain farmer from Talbot County and president of the Maryland Association of Soil Conservation Districts. MASCD represents Maryland's 23 conservation districts, which were established to support voluntary, locally led conservation for farmers and communities in every county across the state. We work with farmers to identify the best management practices that are the right fit for their farm operation to reduce nutrient runoff, decrease erosion, improve water quality, increase soil health, and contribute to Maryland's climate goals. We also work with other individuals, businesses, and communities to ensure that they have support to reduce their impacts on the Chesapeake Bay and local watersheds. The program staffing and priorities look a little different in each district depending on land use, whether the district is more urban or rural, the roles and responsibilities of other partners in the county. Since the Chesapeake Bay TMDL and Watershed Implementation Plan were set in place, Maryland farmers have made extraordinary progress in conservation adoption between 2010 and 2025. The state's investment in additional technical staff is paying off with a 27% increase in acres with conservation plans in the past 3 years. Working with farmers to develop these plans and keep them up to date is one of our highest priorities of the districts. Acres planted in cover crops have tripled, with farmers planting more than 495,000 acres in 2025. That's about 35% of our cropland statewide, compared to just 5% for the national average. Acres of wetlands created, rehabilitated, and restored have nearly quadrupled, with 20,612 acres in 2025 compared to 4,665 acres in 2010. Agricultural drainage management covers 5 times the acres that were managed in 2010. These are just a few practices that have seen dramatic increases in the past 15 years, but Maryland farmers have also contributed to advanced nutrient management, livestock and poultry waste management systems, and soil health practices. Together, these projects reduce nitrogen loads to Chesapeake Bay by 13.6 million pounds and phosphorus by 573,000 pounds. Many of these practices can help with farm profitability over the long term by guiding more efficient use of inputs and increasing resilience to extreme weather. But cost share funds help make sure that the implementation is a priority in tough economic times like we've seen in recent years. And when farmland is leased, the long-term investment may not pay off. Looking to funding, Maryland's conservation districts also work with farmers to use federal funds for conservation. In 2025, conservation districts helped get a total of $69.4 million in state and federal funds on the ground to implement conservation projects. These numbers don't include investments at the county level, other grant projects, or farmers' contributions to the cost of implementing practices. The districts have also been consistent resources for farmers, while the federal government has seen multiple disruptions in funds and staffing over the last year. In the face of this uncertainty, we're fortunate to have a strong partnership with MDA and USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service to meet the needs of the farmers. In closing, I would thank the members of the Maryland General Assembly for the time to speak with you today and your support for soil conservation programs to ensure that our farmers have the tools and technical assistance available that they need. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And before we do questions, I just want to note, although this committee has always taken agriculture very seriously, the speaker just recently reformed the agriculture and now aquaculture subcommittee chaired by Chair Ziegler, which this committee had prior to 2015. So it's great to have an ag committee again. And she's also blessed us with the other farmer besides Delegate Ziegler in the General Assembly. Delegate Anderson is now on the committee as well. So even more attention to it. And of course, on a house-wide basis, the speaker has established the Rural Caucus that Chair Ziegler and Delegate Grice from the Eastern Shore are chairing. So a lot of attention to these issues, even more than usual. And with that, we'll turn to questions. Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for Kimmy, Ms. Doran Lyons. I think I heard you say in your testimony that 5% of ag land was required to be solar. Is that what you said?
So required for the counties to get their power back in the decision-making for the solar generation properties.
Because I think my understanding of the bill that was passed last year was that that was a ceiling, not a requirement.
So for the 5% would just be, I guess, not required, but if the counties wanted to have any decision-making on where the solar could go, that they would have to have 5% of the priority area before they could have that back.
Yeah, I mean, we can get back on this. I'm just not sure that that's true. I mean, I want to talk, Delegate Frazier-Hidalgo was involved in the passage of that bill, and he has left the room for a minute. But I think, my understanding was that it was a ceiling on the amount of land that could be used in certain agricultural areas for solar. So that was my understanding of the bill, but I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
I think the cap was on priority agriculture areas, Delegate Foley. So Delegate Jacobs.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I have a question for Rusty. You mentioned the expiration of the CAFO permit in July and the ongoing absence of the new permit. Can you elaborate to the committee the impact that it's had and for farmers in the local community? But I've had calls from constituents, and I'm thinking of one in particular that had done everything about building his new chicken houses, and the bank wouldn't lend him any money until he had a CAFO permit, and they can't get a CAFO permit. So that's just one case I got in my district that came to mind while you were speaking.
Yes, sir. And I've had several of those. same conversations. We probably got somewhere between 15 to 20 new farmers that are interested in getting in that are in a stall mode. I think the verbiage that we used was a moratorium on new CAFOs, but I think it was a moratorium on new poultry houses. The financial impact or loss of revenue, we estimate between $30 and $40 million in businesses that can't move forward as a result of this. The process is involved when we have to go out and we get engineered site plans to draw up how poultry houses will be laid out in their stormwater plans. That's very extensive in cost, can range anywhere from $20,000 to $60,000. So without having financial support of, say, Horizon Farm Credit, it's difficult for a farmer to come out of pocket with that. And certainly it's viable, and we don't argue that point. However, the majority of the folks that we deal with don't have that money. So there's no way to move forward. So everything is in stall mode. Nothing can move forward. The majority of all the new CAFOs that we permit or that are issued are to new farmers or young farmers that are getting into business. We've got others that are looking to expand operation, but that's the majority. And it's difficult because you have a new farmer, you're looking to establish or reestablish a generational farm, and it's difficult when you explain to them why the permit expired. It's difficult. When you were talking about the Maryland Department of Environment and the inability to get this adopted. So it's difficult to us. But hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be getting resolved as far as new farmers, new operations go. And that's what's concerning, that people are frustrated, like you mentioned, the investment getting up to a certain point. They can't get any satisfaction with the CAFO, and then the banks won't lend the money without one. So it's like you got to spend the money out of your own pocket to get to a point, and then nobody knows how long that's going to take. So it's really, like you said, it's more or less a moratorium on starting new operations.
Certainly, I think the majority of people are understanding. Certainly, when I'm asking them to invest into either $1 million or $2.5 million to build a new poultry farm, it's difficult to say, oh, don't worry about it, they'll get that passed. Go ahead and borrow the money, I'm sure they'll get that passed. Well, no one feels comfortable with that, and I certainly wouldn't feel moving into a new partnership with, the wish, I'm wishing in one hand, and, to me, it's just difficult because they lose confidence. You've got young farmers that are losing confidence in our government and our processes to get things done the way they should be done, to support ag and certainly the poultry. Thank you.
And I have one follow-up question, if I may. And this may be for Jenny or it could be for any of you, but I know last year there was a pretty severe cut to the cover crop program. You brought that up in your comments. And, that's one of the programs that we know has worked. It's helped with the bay cleanup. Statistically, we know that. And I know that farmers, when we talk with farmers, they are all in favor of cover crop, the ones that we've talked with. So from the grain producer standpoint, what's been the impact? Because I know that they stopped the aerial spraying into standing soybeans this past year, and I'm just wondering what kind of impact that had, and what does it mean going forward? Because it involves, the bay cleanup, it involves preserving the land so we don't get runoff and things of that nature.
Right, so I think one of the biggest issues for farmers, it's compounded right now. Not only was the funding reduced, but, like I said, our commodity prices are tanking and our input costs have remained, increasingly higher. So the complication of planting a cover crop for which there is no immediate cash value is, if you're one of the farmers that is got to make these financial decisions and the reduction of the cover crop money affects that business plan, if you will, to decide whether or not to plant a cover crop that year based on what cash you have available to purchase cover crop seed versus seed for your corn, soybeans, wheat, whatever. So it's a balancing act, and I think it's a real challenge just in general for the economics in the agriculture industry right now.
We had a briefing a week ago or so, I guess, from a group of farmers all over the state, and they all concurred in the importance of cover crop, and so I know this committee's always supported cover crop, and I know last year's reduction was very concerning, so hopefully we won't have that issue this year, and then we can continue a vital program, not only to clean the bay up, but also you protect the land and help with the erosion issues. Wouldn't you
Right.
agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, truly the benefits of cover crop are to help, improve your soil health,
Right.
increase your organic matter, which, helps increase the health of your field and therefore your crop. And so I think, farmers recognize that. And if they're giving up anything for cover crop, it's purely based on finances and not based on the need of the crop at that particular year. It's just a tough call to make when you've got a business decision to make, and where's the trade-off?
Thank you.
Delegate Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask Kimmy a couple things about your organization. You speak for a lot of farmers in the state. Do you have statistics on what percentage of all the farmers in the state you represent? Or either that by number of farms or by acres or something to show, the weight of your organization?
So Maryland Farm Bureau represents over 7,000 members in the state. We could get you exact numbers of percentage of acreage in the state and from each county breakdown, if you would like.
Are there farmers that don't belong to the Farm Bureau?
Absolutely, yes.
And, how many of them, do you know how many there are of those? I mean, you probably go out and try to recruit them to join, right?
Yes, I don't have an exact number of how many are involved in Farm Bureau, but we have seen growth in, new members throughout the year, and we have membership goals that we strive. And really, we feel as though we have most of the farms who want to be represented and have a voice in agriculture. It's just more of
Well, do you have like an estimate of do you represent half the farmers in the state, or 25% or 500%, or 80% or whatever it is?
I would say it's probably over half for sure. We could get you an exact percentage.
I'd really like that. The other question I had is again about the solar panels, because I have heard from farmers as well, and it's split. Some want to have the ability to have solar panels on their farms because it's a source of revenue for them, and that will help them to keep the rest of their farm economically viable.
Yeah, I think obviously we care about property rights at Maryland Farm Bureau, and the decision to be able to make those choices for solar. I think, if we could take small parts of farms, 5, 10, 15 acres on a multiple 100-acre operation, that would be one thing. In our area, we just had a solar farm go up, and it's over 212 acres in size in just one parcel. And that land was leased by a farmer who had no decision-making. He could try to match the price that the solar company was going to pay the landowner, but because of the competing rates, he just couldn't afford to do that. So that took 200 acres out of his operation, and he had to downsize his herd because he lost grain land, crops to be able to feed his cattle. And the money didn't benefit a farm. It just hurt the farm's operation. And we see that problem a lot in Maryland because 40% of our farmland is owned by people who aren't farming but are releasing their land out to individual farmers.
Thank you.
Delegate Anderson.
Wayne, maybe you're the best one to answer this question for me. We've heard $16 billion coming from the Secretary and the President to farmers. I've heard numbers of from 66 to 75% of the farmers that are going to receive those payments, they're already obligated to past obligations that they have. Could you explain that to this committee? So there seems to be, this isn't a cash cow coming to the agriculture community that the administration in Washington wants us to perceive it to be. And I would like, from a banker's perspective, I think you could explain that to this committee.
Yeah, certainly. You've got, you know, all grain farmers in general, they plant the crop at the end of the year, they borrow all the funds to put the crop in, at the end of the year, they harvest it, and then they have to repay those operating expenses at the end of the year. That's pretty much how any grain farmer works. The funds that are going to be coming in from that are really, for most balance sheets we've seen so far, are going to be used to pay those operating expenses from 2025. That's not to buy new equipment. That's not going to be to do repairs and stuff like that. Kind of with the state that we're seeing the grain industry in, with prices being down, with inputs still being high, you know, unless you catch that magical year where you can really get great yields, you're just looking to break even at best. And many of our farmers did not break even last year. Based on the Delmarva Peninsula, certainly the south half, certainly where you're from. It was drier than it was in the north half. Plenty of those farmers are not seeing any profits at all. So those funds are going to be coming in and directly set right back out to for inputs from the previous year.
John or Jenny, economic times in agriculture are hard. I hear myself and my constituents saying that it's hard to pencil in a profit on grain in 2026. Most of them are negative numbers. Could you explain to the committee on your commitments that you've already made? If I do a crop budget and it ends up at a negative $75 an acre, there are people that come up to me and ask me, well, why would you do this work for 70 and lose $75 when you know you can't win to start from? But in reality, John, sitting here today, you've probably got $400 an acre invested already before you start farming. So when you finish the year at $50 negative, you've come $350 ahead, but you still haven't made any money. Could you elaborate that to this committee a little bit on the finances and what stress we're under in 2026?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we go into this every year. We've done this for the last several years. This time of year, we know we're not going to make any money by harvest time. It's with the grain prices and unfortunately the yields that we continue to achieve. We know we're going to break even at best, and that's a heck of a way to run a business. I can't do it forever. I'm 69 years old. I don't even know how many more years I'm going to continue to do this. I mean, it's, you know, I have no family, no children that are going to come along and take over the farm. It's, you know, when I stop farming, my land will be farmed, the land I own will be farmed, the land I rent, somebody will farm it. There's always nobody's coming along, but somebody will do it, and somehow in their life, they'll figure out how to make it pencil out. But the prices don't pencil out. I mean, unless they got different kind of math than I have, it just doesn't financially work. And, you know, we're buying seed. We bought seed already a couple months ago. We've bought cover crop seed back acquired expense with the cover crop that we're having the ground right now back last June when we either saved seed or had to buy seed for this fall to plant. And, you know, that doesn't get caught up again until June or July when we get reimbursed for that. It's very difficult with a negative cash flow, it seems like all the time to make this work. And it's, you know, we keep going, we keep trying, keep hoping for a better situation because that's what farmers do. You know, it's very difficult times right now.
On the solar versus agriculture use of the land, and I'll let anybody chime in on this. The thing that I'm hearing and what I'm experiencing is it's the degradation of the rural community. Because if my crop budget is $800 an acre, $400 of that acre input cost is going in my community. The other 400 is going to the fertilizer company, or it's going to the equipment manufacturer or the seed company. But the other 400 in labor and markup and land rent is going to the local community. And I'm seeing that the $400 per acre loss in the community business seems to be impacting areas much more so than the taxes that the solar companies are paying on the equipment that they've put on the property. Do you all see that? Do you, anybody?
I'd just like, real quick on that. I mean, there's some solar situations in my area. There's certainly plenty of others in Talbot County, in Queen Anne's County, Caroline County. But I don't see how everybody says, oh, that land can come back into ag once the solar's deactivated, decommissioned was the word. That'll never happen. I don't believe it'll ever happen. There's so much been done to that land to create the infrastructure on the land that it takes for the solar, that you take all that infrastructure away, the soil is still been manipulated so strongly that it'll never be what it was before the solar farms were created. It never happened. And that's a terrible loss to agriculture. The thought that everybody says, oh, you'll be able to bring it back into production in 25 years. It'll never happen. Not as we know that ground today.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to Delegate Ziegler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I wanted to go back to cover crop. So I do remember that the aerial seeding was taken out of the cover crop program, but we still were able to do ground aerial, which is what works for us. I tried the helicopter thing before, it didn't work. But I'm not aware of any other cuts to the program. And I know it's distributed through soil conservation and there are districts. So I'm in the Howard Montgomery Soil Conservation District. And I know there was a fear of that because of program open space cuts. But I thought that there was, oh, Tyler Huff can help me out here. There was another program that covered it, I believe. So I just wanted to ask about that, but I certainly share your concern about it. We definitely, you know, we couldn't afford to do it if we didn't have some subsidies. So I certainly strongly support keeping that going. It's an important program.
So the base rate per acre was reduced, as well as several of the incentives were removed or reduced. So overall, there was a reduction in how the money was allocated per acre to the farms. Now, aerial seeding into corn was still allowed and still had an incentive by a specific date. I think it was October 10th or October 15th, but not aerial seeding into soybeans. But overall, there was a reduction in the base rate that was reimbursed.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Baker.
Thank you. My questions would be for Mr. Covington, Chicken Association. I would be interested in knowing, you talked about the difficulties in permitting and the process in Maryland, and I would like to know a little bit about the same types of processes in Virginia and Delaware. How do they compare? How are they different? Some sort of a timeline to go with that, if you could.
Yes, sir. So without probably going into the details to complicate it, I'd say Delaware, Sussex County is probably the quickest. So if we had an interested party that came to us now and said, hey, we'd like to construct houses, we'd probably have them in a year. We'd have them from start to finish. We'd be placing the first chicks on the farm. Kent County, we'd probably extend that out some in Delaware. In Maryland, you're going to be, probably a year and a half, closer to 2 years, going through the process. And again, I'm not saying that it's, the processes or the actual entities that you have to work with, but there's a lot more red tape that we find in Maryland as compared to probably Delaware.
And Virginia?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. I'm sorry. Virginia, again, Virginia makes Maryland look great. I will say Virginia is 2.5 years.
Okay.
They're permitting, they've stacked, and they've made it clear in some avenues that they're not as friendly with ag or the poultry side as certainly Maryland and Delaware.
Okay. And just one more question. Do you have any numbers as to, I'd like to know how many chicken farms we have in Virginia, how many in Delaware, and how many in Maryland? Do you have those numbers?
I can get that for you. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Delegate Baker, I know you don't like to light your mic more than once a week, but we're going to have the Governor's Permitting Council here later this week, and I hope you'll ask them about what you just asked the association about. It's a great topic. Seeing no other questions for this panel, thank you all very much. We will call up our Secretary of Agriculture, Secretary Addix. And Secretary Addix, we know you were kind of a late addition to this briefing, so we appreciate you making the time to come chat with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Kevin Addix, Secretary of the Maryland Department of Agriculture, joined here today by Steve Connolly, who is our Deputy Secretary, to your right, and to your left, Hans Schmidt, who is our Assistant Secretary for Resource Conservation. The experts who sat up here, who are practitioners, told you the story about what's happening on the ground. I will stay at a higher level, talk about our department and some of the programs, but I'll start with our priorities. And our priorities are, first of all, conservation, to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep the soil healthy and to keep rainwater and any nutrients, et cetera, on the farm and out of the waterways. Secondly, it's agricultural literacy. It's the idea that everybody eats, and yet hardly anybody grows their food. And so what has happened over the generations is we have a population in Maryland who does not know truly who grows their food and where their food comes from and what goes into the process of growing and storing and distributing and processing that food. Next up is food security. The idea that we have, if and when we continue to have populations in this state that do not have ready access to food, that do not have ready access to fresh, healthy food, that there is more work to be done. And so we directly connect the idea that we grow food with the fact that we need to feed people. And so connecting those dots between agricultural literacy and food security and conservation, and next up, preservation, it is all connected. The fact that if we are not keeping land reserved for agriculture in perpetuity, we will develop it. We will develop it. I don't know what it will look like, but I can guarantee you that if it is not preserved over time, we will develop it. Finally, one of the ways to preservation beyond preservation programs, which pay farmers to keep that land in agriculture, is farm profitability. If we are, as a state, working to revise our regulations, which we just heard is needed, when we are, as a state, encouraging new businesses to get into the food production realm, and we're making sure that farmers have ready market access, then that farmer will be profitable, and that land will continue to remain in agriculture. So those are our top priorities. I did want to highlight a few of our programs that are so critical. First, under the flag of conservation, we've got our cover crop program, which you heard is probably has the best ROI of any program in the state in terms of conservation practices. We are paying farmers, covering their cost of seed in order to keep that land basically in cultivation, keep roots in the ground, essentially prevent bare land, which over the winter and into the spring, if we get heavy rains, we could then have runoff. And so cover crops truly are our best answer in terms of keeping the soil healthy and keeping nutrients on the soil, in the soil, and building that soil health. Next, our conservation grants program, which you heard referenced earlier. That is our way of working with farmers to make sure that as they are presented with challenges with their land, and a lot of farmers, you get your land and now you have to manage it and make sure that you're a good conservation partner. We've got certain practices that we pay for or cost share with the farmer to make sure that they are able to implement. And again, it's about soil health, it's about agronomics and making sure that we're doing everything we can back to that farm profitability, obviously conservation in mind. You helped us launch a program, or are helping us launch a program because it's just about to launch, called the Leaders in Environmentally Engaged Farming. Acronym is LEAF. You will hear much more about it. It was part of the Governor's Bay Legacy Act last year. And what that will do is it will allow us to prioritize not only our existing conservation plans and programs, but to sandbox brand new conservation concepts with the idea that farmers know their operations and their land best. And so just through eyes up, checking out what's happening out in the field, we are finding many new practices that once we start giving credit for them, as opposed to that's very nice, thank you for doing that, but actually baking them into our consciousness and our conservation programs, we will be able to go further faster. With LEAF, we are also engaging the farm community in community best practices for the first time, with the understanding that we've got populations nearby farms that don't really understand farm operations. So what are we doing actively as an agricultural industry to engage our neighbors who are not engaged in farming and helping them better understand what it is that we do when we are growing food? Animal health. As you know, we've got ongoing situations with high-path avian influenza. As an agency, we've got 2 labs, one in Salisbury, one in Frederick, that are monitoring the health of animals around the state, supporting our industry. And when we do have situations like the current active case of avian influenza, we are running point as an agency on our regional response. We collaborate with Delaware, with Virginia, and went on the border with Pennsylvania as well to make sure that we are working as a region, knowing that the source of avian influenza knows no boundaries. And so we do find that when there are cases in Delaware, there are cases in Maryland. And so we do work collectively and collaboratively. I did want to point to a few initiatives when it comes back to that farm profitability. First of all, we have a marketing department a marketing program within our department that runs our Maryland's Best promotion program. There is a rebranding underway. There's an announcement soon on a whole new brand for encouraging our farmers to be promoting the fact that they're growing local. We also have a new program manager who will be reforming our marketing program into the Marketing and Ag Development Program. So we will, for the first time, be actively engaged in launching new businesses, helping new farmers start up, helping farmers take that next step toward profitability. So that's a big move for us. It's in concert and consultation with our Department of Commerce, but there's an acknowledgement that farms are a little bit different, and so there are some ways that we will be able to make those connections between Marbidco and Farm Credit and our new farmers and Farm Bureau and Future Harvest and all of the groups that operate out in the wild. I would also like to point out our horse industry in the state. There's been some news overnight about the impending purchase of Laurel Park and what that will, how that will be integrated as a training facility for our thoroughbred racing industry. We've obviously got the redevelopment of Pimlico, which will be huge not only for the industry but for the community. Knowing that that the horse racing industry is just a part of the overall horse ecosystem in Maryland, we've launched, through the governor's support and through an executive order by the governor, a horse industry strategic plan, which will begin to look at every single aspect of the equine industry. Because when you think of it, if it's only about racing, we have to then bring all of the infrastructure in, all of the equine dentists, all of the vets, everything else we need to import if we're not focusing on building all of the rest of the industry and the sectors. When you look at how many horses there are in the state, so many of them are in training facilities, in boarding, kids are learning to ride, they're in therapeutic operations, they're trail riders, et cetera. And so this strategic plan will, for the first time, bring all of the different equine assets together and present what a future could look like for this industry, knowing that it must thrive. As you know, and this is non-agricultural, I'll jump off for a second and just say we've got a consumer protection department, a series of programs within our department, and they range from inspecting gas stations to launching our new EV charger inspection program
to a whole series of different things, food protection, mosquito control, on and on and on. So there's that side of the industry that if ever you have questions about those, please come to your farm agency to learn more. Finally, I will end with a few statewide programs that we're very excited about. First of all, you know, in this industry, because you do not just land, but you do water, we've got the invasive blue catfish, and we've got a catfish purchase program that is getting catfish out of the water and onto tables. We're working with chefs. We are working with our International Programs Office to try to get containers loaded so that we can send this really, really delectable beast to other countries. So we're doing everything we can to create markets for it. We've got the Maryland Market Money Program, which helps to support our food insecure neighbors. And what the Maryland Market Money Program does is it takes just a little bit of money and it amplifies that through private contributions and from contributions from local jurisdictions, so that when someone who is in one of the food security programs walks into a farmer's market, for example, and shows their card or their badge or whatever it is they might have for that program, the Maryland Market Money gives them extra dollars to go buy fresh local products. So they've made the effort to get to a farmer's market. They are given extra funds through this Maryland Market Money program to buy local and to buy fresh, because we know that it's more nutritious and those dollars continue to circulate within our market. The last thing I will say, and it leads into the Permit Review Council, which will be joining you for a briefing shortly. We just released a statewide guidance document on agritourism, and the goal of that document was to go through every jurisdiction in the state, look at all of the rules and regulations and the enforcement of the rules and regulations and the permits and the licenses needed, and to flag where we could be for agritourism and value-added agriculture. So the connecting with the community and the creating products from farm products on farms, what we can be doing as a state to make those more efficient. So that document is available on our website. And with that, I will pause and offer any answers to questions.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I want to keep this focused on the ag industry, but
Yes.
would you come and see Chair Fraser-Dago and I to talk about EV chargers and some of the actions being taken there?
It would be my
and some concerns that I have. Delegate Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Secretary Addix, for your presentation today. I want to follow up on the CAFO permitting issue a little bit. I know that it's, you know, the permits comes from MDE, and they're not here sitting at the front table today for us to grill them up a little bit, but I'm trying to understand why the thing expired to begin with. And you listen and you hear the impact today from the presentation that it's almost like a moratorium on all these people that are trying to get these new houses built. And I've got a constituent that's, you know, really frustrated, young guy, just trying to start this new operation, and it's just like running into a brick wall. So, I mean, what's your involvement in this to try to resolve some of this issue? I guess we'll deal with the permitting people when they get here next week, but it's a serious problem. I mean, you heard 30 million plus possible dollars. It's pretty serious in the poultry business.
Well, we agree that it's serious. Whenever you have a pause in new construction like that, and with, as you just heard, we're trying to get new businesses open, and so when we go through that effort and then all of a sudden there's this pause due to a delayed application or a delayed renewal, it is frustrating, and I understand that. What we have done is we've committed to work with MDE and with the industry to make sure that we're giving them every support that we can to make sure that the next time a permit's coming up for renewal, that it's getting in early. Let's not do on time. We'll get it in early, and I've spoken with Secretary McElwain about that, and she's completely on board with that. The challenge has really been that moratorium, from my understanding, was legislated. And so if that permit happens to be late, and we'll work on that as an administration going forward, but if that permit happens to be late, there is a statutory moratorium on the issuance of new permits, licenses, CAFOs for new poultry houses. And so that does seem like that will need a fix going forward.
All right, thank you very much.
And Delegate Jacobs, on January 27th, the Maryland Department of Environment is giving us a series of updates on various issues we all care about. CAFO is on that list, so we'll have specifically on that topic. Delegate Frazier-Hidalgo.
Mr. Chairman. Secretary, it's great to see you.
Good to see you.
I'm happy to be back and starting to have conversations on a more regular basis with you. I want to first say thank you very much for helping with the, the ag kind of transition in Montgomery County that we're having in districts 14, 15, and throughout. And secondly, you had mentioned about agriculture and the importance of local agriculture. Can you explain the concept of food as medicine?
Sure. Food as medicine is like the original concept of if you eat healthy, life's pretty good. If you eat healthy, you will be able to learn better. If you eat healthy, you will be able to stave off some diseases, many of which have been brought on by dietary choices. And so the concept with food is medicine is, and you come at it from a variety of different angles, but one could be from the health side where we do have hospital systems, doctors, and our research institutions at Hopkins and University of Maryland Medical Center, for sure, and many others, are looking at actually prescribing food boxes, prescribing certain meals as a prescription, as a remedy. So we could try to lower your cholesterol or blood pressure or whatever it is through medication, or we could start with your diet. And so it's really just a repackaging of the concept that if we are eating better, chances are we will do better. It's one of the reasons we have a farm to school program where we are doing everything we can to work with local food systems, who, by the way, over time have lost their kitchens. So they really just have what essentially is a catering kitchen where they can warm things and put things in bins, but they can't cook or render food. And so that's part of the reason why we're trying to stand up and adjust our food system a bit in the state so that we can better provide that fresh and local food for our schools, because there's a lot of research that shows that if kids are eating better, and the local component I'll mention in a moment, but if they're eating better, they're going to do better in schools. Why does local matter? It is the distance, not just geographically, but time between when the food is grown or harvested or processed to when it is consumed. The longer that lettuce, broccoli, spinach is in that container, on a truck, on a train, coming from Arizona or Mexico, it could be a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks sometimes, depending upon the product, before it ends up on the plate. Every day, it's losing nutrient density and nutrient value. And so, ideally, controlled environment agriculture, we're growing lettuce and greens year-round right near the markets that need them. So in Baltimore, next to the school, whatever it might be.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Delegate Naraki.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's good to be able to see you this year. It's a little bit easier now, the big at the end. Thank you. Mr. Secretary, it's great to see you, sir. I'm going to change gears a little bit. I'm going to ask a question about some of those other areas that the Department of Agriculture covers. I want to talk about midges for a moment. I knew that you did. I thought it was coming. I know, and we've had many good discussions about midges. In fact, we had a good one the other day. Mr. Secretary, if you would you maybe sort of let the committee know where that is now and what we need to be able to do to have a more substantial midge program, not only in Baltimore County, but I know there's other counties affected as well. I had constituents join today. In fact, they're here with us in committee now from Carson's Creekside Restaurant, which I'm sure you may have eaten at before. It's pretty hard to enjoy your crab cake, in June when there's a ton of midges flying around the restaurant there. So I'm just curious kind of where we are and what we need to do to maybe have a more permanent solution to that problem.
Mr. Chair, if I could propose a nuisance insect tour, committee tour. No? Okay. So midges are a non-biting, swarming insect out in Western, and we're seeing it in Baltimore County, some in Harford County and beyond. Out in Western Maryland, we have black flies, which are nuisance, swarming, and biting insects. And so it really comes down to, do we know how to control them and manage them? Yes. Is it seasonal? So some years are worse than others? Yes, because the conditions are different. Do we know how to prevent and mitigate them? The answer is also yes. But then it comes down to a math problem. And so we've had good years, and then the next year we budget lower, and that happens to be a bad year, and then we're stuck looking for money. Because of these being non-biting midges, not the black flies, but non-biting, they are considered nuisance, so it's not considered a public health emergency. So a lot of the federal funds that could go toward mosquitoes, for example, which is a disease-carrying vector, the money just doesn't exist. And so it ends up needing to be a state appropriation. We do have some money in our midge budget. We do work with Baltimore County. I'm hoping to meet with the county executive in the next few weeks just to talk about how we can coordinate better going forward to help manage it. But the midges and the black flies and others, it's a serious situation. If you live in one of these communities, it is insufferable. I did visit Baltimore County, Middle River area during the last outbreak, and I was shocked.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more. Okay. This committee has had some restructuring, as you're well aware, Mr. Secretary, and part of the responsibility now in this committee is also, to a greater extent, I should say, there was always some here, but the wastewater facilities as well is much more even now part of this. Do you think that we could maybe get some more synergy going? Not that you're not working with, I know you have, and you and I even talked about going and touring Back River and some of these other places, but I feel now with this new committee alignment that we have here that there could be opportunities even for some more synergy. I know that Baltimore City is trying to do a lot, and they have done a lot at that facility, but I'm not sure that we are fully where we need to be, not only from Baltimore City, but also from Baltimore County's perspective with some of the pumping stations and things like that. How could we help you to kind of better foster that relationship, further those relationships with those various agencies to kind of, again, get the root of the problem here?
Well, we're always happy to engage and have cross-agency collaboration and cooperation. You're mentioning wastewater. Why is that of concern? It's all part of the environmental conservation kind of ecosphere here. So agriculture is widely pointed to as the last mile when it comes to cleaning up the bay, because it is just hundreds, if not thousands, of non-point potentially polluters. And that's why we're so drilled in on having our conservation program, so that we're making sure that we're doing our part, any opportunity we can to keep the nutrients from flowing off the farm. When it comes to wastewater treatment, and there's two ways we engage, wastewater treatment is one of the point sources. And so the state has done a very good job, and it's all in partnership with locals in making sure that we're revising how we're operating these plants and doing everything we can to make sure that there are not overflows, outflows, et cetera. Back to midges, one of the reasons why we have such a situation with midges in Middle River, Back River, Bird River, et cetera, is it's probably not a coincidence that we've got the wastewater treatment plant there. And so the nutrient density is a little bit higher there. The load is higher in those rivers, and midges, unfortunately, thrive in nutrient-rich waters. And so obviously we play a role in that too, which is back to our conservation programs, but happy to work with the wastewater treatment folks.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Last questions for Delegate Anderson.
Mr. Secretary, the consumer protection element of the Maryland Department of Agriculture seems to be growing. Seems to be a lot more interest in that. Could you elaborate on that?
Sure. With consumer protection, there are a number of different programs within. One of the biggest is weights and measures. And so every single scale in this commercial scale in the state is measured and calibrated and tested by our department. So that's truck scales, that's the scales in the local, Aldi for chicken salad. It's all of those scales end up being calibrated by our department. Every gas station, we are measuring the flow. We're not measuring the quality of the fuel. The comptroller's office measures the quality of the fuel, so there's dual inspection over gas pumps. But we're making sure that the consumer is getting the amount of fuel that they are paying for and that the pumps are operating. Our newest program is launching this summer, and it's our EV charger inspection program, which is following kind of the same model as our fuel inspection program. And again, with that, it's making sure that the consumer is getting the value that they are attempting to purchase. And with EV chargers being a rather new technology that has not been regulated up to this point, there are a lot of complaints that we field from consumers feeling like they're not getting their, and these are the same concerns we get about scales, et cetera, is I bought a pound of fish and I came home and weighed it and I only had 3/4 pound. And so we will then inspect. The same thing is happening with EV chargers. And so we're excited to get that program up and running. We're having discussions with our partner agencies on the best way to do that, what the fee will be going forward. We've had a lot of community interest and community input, which has helped us revise the program, and our ears are still open through the spring and into the summer before we launch July 1. Our food inspection program is another one where we're inspecting eggs and other processing around the state. And it all, to us, yes, there's the consumer component of it, but we go back to that farm profitability, which frankly is why those programs in the beginning of time were placed within the Department of Agriculture. Is it's generally about moving product and about making sure that the farms are able to market their products in a fair way and that the consumer is able to receive them.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, thank you all very much. We are going to transition to our next briefing. To do that, we have to reset the system, everybody, so don't go far, but we are going to reset. So see you all in just a moment.
Thank you.